My name's Darren. I like kicking kids, punching dogs, and drinking lukewarm Pepsi. I'm dating your daughter. Isn't that great? Ugh.
Yeah, they'd like play up like if the boyfriend on the couch was like already an ex, they just made him look even worse than
Yeah.
he already was.
Yeah. I loved it. And the parents would get on it too. I would live for that because the parents would be like,
Yeah.
"You're a loser." He goes, what?" And then I loved parental control.
All right, here's a quick question.
Yes.
If you were a parent and a magic card was your child's partner and you were trying to get rid of them, what would that magic card be?
Janeth Magistrate.
Oh gosh. We're getting discoursey today.
It's okay, listen. The card, man in the card, attractive. All right. But when you read between the
He's
lines,
got
you
a
see the red
dope fade.
flags. Yeah, he
Dope
does have a dope
fade.
fade. Yeah, you look at him and you're like, wow, he's, my child did well. Good looking card like that. And then you read between the lines and you see the red flags and you see it's a stacks piece and you go, maybe we can get you to date this nice, Wilson. He has partner,
A literal bear.
a literal bear. Well, he's friend shaped and
Yeah.
astute. And
Does
he
he
has
have
partners,
glasses
so he's
too?
willing to change with you, you know?
Fair.
Yeah. It's the only card I could think of.
I think I'd pick Sloppity Bile Piper because they probably smell.
They probably smell. I mean,
That's
is
literally it. They smell.
is Bile Piper their family name? Do you think that's
I S Bile Piper.
yeah.
Great
That's Bile
question.
Piper, Esquire.
Let us know in the comments if you think that that's first name last name. Just like
Yeah.
Draneth is almost first name. It's kind of sounds like Janet, like that text you sent me a couple weeks ago.
It autocorrected. I did voice to text and autocorrected Draneth to Janet. And I actually think that's kind of great. It's a good nickname, Janet.
It's like kind of picking up and like slowly becoming a thing.
Really? Oh my
Janet
God.
Magistrate.
I'm not even kidding. And I'm being 1,000% honest with you right here, right now. It has been my dream. I'm not joking. Ever since I first started playing Magic to coin an iconic name for a card like Eugene or Gary or Skittles. I want that for me. I want that for me so
You want
bad.
Janet?
I want Janet to
Yeah,
become a thing.
I mentioned it on the RC Discord a couple weeks ago, and people were just like, "Wait, what?" And I was like, "Chase accidentally texted it to me. It's stuck ever since. I can't not think of it." And like 10 people were just like, "Okay, yeah, this fits. I'm into it. This is a thing now. Let's go."
After we record this, I am going to tweet that out. I'm going to be like, we're calling it Janet. We're making it a thing. If I can coin this, forever in Magic history. Wash my hands. I'm done. Biggest accomplishment.
So what are we actually talking about this week?
Well, my lovely friend, this week we are talking about removal. What a fun little topic that is, and why, there's a lot of chitter chatter going on about removal in terms of you should just run more removal or it dies to removal. What's up with that? Like a Jerry Seinfeld kind of thing. What's the
It's
deal
bad.
with
That's what I
removal?
pictured. That's what I pictured. What? But like, seriously though, what is the deal with removal? Why are people like this? Because like, I don't know.
Why are you like this?
This is just me and my hot take. Like, I think the whole dice to removal, just run removal thing is just a bunch of BS. Like, it's people weaponizing opinions and like misplacing their judgments and
Mhm,
misplacing their opinions personally.
mhm.
Also, like everything dies to removal at some point.
Yeah.
So does that mean like every card ever is just bad?
Yes. All right, we're done. That's
That's the episode. See you
that's
next
the
week.
episode. Every card's bad. But I'm really happy that you brought up this topic because I really like this. I used to be one of these people. Let's backpedal a little bit, travel back in time and talk about how The day that Hull Breacher was banned, I will never forget it. I was just leaving my Starbucks job. It was dark times. And I was so sad. I saw Hull Breacher was banned, and I made like this little angry little tweet tirade being like, just run removal. It's fine. Obviously, that it's not fine. I get it now. It was a good card. It deserved to be banned. Breaks my heart every time. I have an artist proof sitting here that I'll never get anything done with because why? But
You can flex on people.
I
That's
can
why.
flex on people with it, but I will say I was really heartbroken that it was banned. So I was like, you just run worm removal because in my head it just seemed like the obvious choice. But you have to remember, in a situation with like Hull Breacher, it basically locks you out of the game, and you don't even have a chance to run removal, and it's this whole big deal. But the point is that it doesn't give you any good conversation or any good I don't want to say critique, but they're good discourse. And when I say discourse, I don't mean online internet discourse. I mean healthy discussion about it. It just seems like a buzzword that you hear.
Yeah. Like discourse is actually good. Discourse
Yes.
is inherently healthy, productive conversation.
Mhm.
And the internet, being the internet, has just misconstrued a definition for the sake of narrative.
Oh yeah.
I think it's apt to bring up like this whole just run removal thing, dies to removal thing, is because of Elesh Norn, Mother of Machines. We've
Mhm.
mentioned on the show, but like that literal same sentiment to a T that you used to have about Hull Breacher is
Mhm.
the exact same sentiment that the community is like working around in circles about Elesh
Mhm.
Norn right now. So I think it's really interesting. Like this isn't a one off thing. Every creature that ends up in the discourse or the zeitgeist of the community
Mhm.
boils down to dice removal. Just remove it. Just play removal in your deck.
Yeah. And for me, I've noticed that nowadays we don't really discuss the cards like this anymore. We kind of just say, "Oh, well, dice removal, it's fine," and we kind of brush it off. That's why I kind of said it was a buzzword. And
Yeah.
I really wanna bring up Sheldon's article about Elish Norn because he really went in depth on like, this is why I think here's some of the positives of the card, here are some of the negatives of the card. It was a very like detailed analysis, and obviously it's an opinion, and you don't have to agree with that opinion, but it's better that we do that and analyze a card and the way it was designed, how it can be run in decks, how it can be run as a commander. That's better than just saying, well, it dies to Doomblade. I see a lot of people say it dies to Doomblade. I mean, but that doesn't give
Literally
anything
every creature that
constructive.
isn't black dies to Doomblade.
Exactly.
Like
It's not
literally
constructive
every creature.
conversation. Yeah.
I think people are quick to judgment, and I think people are quick to deflect that judgment as well. And like you
Hmm.
said, they don't take a moment to like look at the nuance.
Hmm.
Like Elesh Norn, Hull Breacher, Dranith Magistrate, like literally every kind of like remotely controversial card, or remotely discoursey card, I think is a
Hmm.
better way to word it, from the past like 3 years,
Yeah.
theoretically self-selects itself into a certain sect of the format.
Yes.
And this is where they're worried because this gets into like a dockside extortionist sort of thing.
Hmm.
um, these self-selected cards are making their way into more places than the self-selected parts of the format. You're seeing dockside at more casual tables
Yeah.
recently. Elesh Norn being a hallmark character for this upcoming year, and like the big mythic
Mm.
on all the advertising, everything like that. It's going to be incredibly popular. White's been on a huge uprise.
Mm.
ETBs and like enter the battlefield sort of things is like one of the most popular, most common set of words stapled onto a creature these days.
Yeah.
So like it fundamentally doubles the most common thing that a deck is probably doing, and then shuts off the most common thing that a deck is probably doing. And that's where the conversation doesn't really get into. And that's the conversation that people kind of need to have before they just say, "Oh, it just
Mhm.
dies to removal, so it's not that big of a deal."
Yeah. And I will say this is kind of like I know we're kind of getting a little bit weird with Alice Norn here, but for
It's the
me
litmus
it's
test
it
that kind of
is.
sparked all of this for everybody,
It
so
really
it makes
is, but
sense.
like with stuff like Dockside, it makes sense for people to want to run it consistently in decks that
Hmm.
have red. But when you look at Elesh Norn, I feel like, and again, we can't really know until we see it in person. Because I mean, how many
Exactly.
times have we as a community been like, "Oh, the sky is falling," and then the card gets printed, and we're like, "Oh, whoa, nothing happens." But
Well,
like,
it's like, how many green mythics were printed this past year?
God,
Because we are
how much
technically
time do you
recording
have?
this on New Year's Eve.
There's a lot.
Yeah, you like that's exactly it though.
But I feel like Elish Norn regulates herself in a way that Dockside doesn't. She does look very scary and she is very powerful, don't get me wrong, but I can really only see her thriving in two decks. Deck number one, hard stacks deck. You want to be very controlling, you want to eliminate your opponent's options, give you more. And then the second one is just like a flicker deck, like an ETB flicker deck, which is
Hmm.
there's a lot of options to do that in mono white. I used to have a Selesnya flicker deck and most of the pieces were white in there. She's good as a 99 for a flicker or 99 in stacks or commander in either or. But past that, I don't see her being too present in white. I mean, but again, that's just like my pre meta concept.
Yeah, she's a 5 mana 4/7, so like the stats for the price are good, and it's the combination of the stats for the price and the fact that she's a panharmonicon and a torpor
Hmm.
orb all at the same time. So
Yeah.
you're hitting that trifecta of this could be a problem.
Hmm.
When you look at it that way, I can understand
Oh,
why
yeah.
there would be some inevitable conversations because we've
Yeah.
never seen 5 mana card like that. You would expect it to be like a 4/3 or like a 4/4 or something like that.
In all honesty, I really wish that they would have changed her pips around a little bit. I think she's too splashable. I really
Hmm.
would have liked them to do at five. I think is a good mana value for her. I would have liked maybe 2 and 3 white pips,
I was
or
thinking the exact same
I
thing.
really think like if you really amp up because they did that. They did that in Kamigawa. They gave a lot of
Yeah,
pips in
the
Kamigawa, and that
invokes.
makes it very hard to splash. And I like that. That makes you kind of the gears are turning in your head. You're working harder to deck build and make the thing happen. She just feels too easy.
Hmm. Like we kind of talked about it last week though. Treasure has kind of made pippage on cards a little less relevant.
That's true. Yeah, we did.
But that's besides the point. That is way too deep in the weeds on Elesh Norn.
So
But
I think it was good constructive conversation
I think it's a
about
conversation
Elish.
that we needed to have.
Yeah.
It sets the baseline for what we're gonna talk about the rest of the show. And that's
Yes.
like why you actually probably do want to run removal, but probably why you don't.
Yeah. We're doing a reverse psychology with you here.
Exactly. I I have this theory,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna run it past you.
Yes.
Uh, I think people don't run removal in their decks because the cards are boring.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I think it's boring. I think standard removal is boring. So yeah.
Most people I know add removal to their decks at the end of their deck brewing process because those are like the boring cards.
That's me. It's me.
Whereas you look at something like ramp ramp cards are the boring cards that let you do the thing that you actually want to do and do
Mhm.
all the fun stuff. So you add those first. They're equally as important, but they have a different emphasis put onto them in the
Yeah.
deck building process.
For me, when it comes to the deck building process, I mean, I do a lot of brewing on stream, so I do it really consistently. And it's it's weird because I used to go from like putting it in at the very beginning, but then when I would put it in at the very beginning and I started adding cards that felt more on theme with the deck, I felt like, well, like I want this a lot more than I want like a damnation or a wrath of
Hmm.
God or something or a day of judgment. It felt not as exciting as the card that could possibly interact with my deck in a unique way.
Yeah, there's more than 3 pieces of removal ever printed in Commander. Like you don't need Wrath of God, Blasphemous Act, and Cyclonic Rift in every deck.
What do you mean?
I know they're easy. I know they are. 2 of them are relatively affordable-ish these
Iconic. I
days,
mean,
but
they're
like
iconic.
it's literally not a game of Commander without a red deck playing Blasphemous Act.
Yeah,
I've heard that said on Twitter. I've heard that said on Twitter before.
And if you heard it
and I
said on
believe
Twitter,
it.
it must be true. I'm
Exactly.
so sorry.
No, I like this. I like this idea though of like theming your removal. Like I know you're. What's the path to exile that you run in Alibu? Because there's a lot of cards that fit that bill.
I'm really glad that you said that because that's been helping me change my concept of deck building up a little bit more is like finding ways to make removal exciting and have it really be integrated in your deck building theme. So, for instance, I don't run a ton of removal in Alibu, and the reason why is because Alibu themselves is removal baked into your commander. Every time I attack, I have the option to remove something. And that could be player removal, that could be creature removal, stuff like that. But I do have a couple pieces of removal in there. And originally I did have like swords and path, but I really didn't want to give my opponent resources with those two. So I popped in a dispatch, which is essentially the same thing in an Alibu deck, which if you have a certain amount of artifacts, you exile the creature that you would target. Because I think it says tap target creature, and then if it's like you have
Hmm.
3 or more artifacts, you exile it instead. So I run that because it's a really good way to get rid of something big in the deck. It feels rewarding because I met the criteria to hit that spell, and it feels on theme with what I'm trying to do in Alibu.
Yeah, like I kind of do something similar with Celebrity Deathmatch where I run Decree of Pain and like basically all of my removal spells are wrestling puns or like cards that sound like they'd be like fighting moves.
Mhm.
So like it does you don't necessarily have to just like pick oh, I'm running an artifact deck. I'm going to run the Metalcraft removal cards. Like you can like get thematic even just like with names or effects and stuff like that.
Oh
And
yeah.
a lot of these more niche cards like Dispatch, Decree of Pain are like pennies compared to staples.
Yeah.
So they even make great budget options as well. Like I think like Blasphemous Act is
Mhm.
reprinted like several times a year and it's still like a $3 card or
Yeah,
something like that.
it's insane, but, like, when you tailor make it, it feels more rewarding. Like,
Yeah.
you feel like you accomplished something. Like, I don't have my deck anymore, but I had my Emiel the Blessed deck, and I wanted to run a lot of creatures to flicker ETBs, so I didn't wanna run a lot of removal. I think the only removal I ran was Swords Path and maybe a Beast Within. But the rest of my removal was creature-based, and I would get continuous removal because I would flicker things. So I had things like
Hmm.
Terastodon in there is a really good example of just like a flicker
Oh
you get
yeah.
value consistently.
We are big fans of Nasty Terasti here.
Oh, nasty Terasti.
Yeah.
I don't like that. Sounds so
Hey,
gross.
you wanted to like make Janet a thing. You got to respect the other cards that are already things like Nasty Terasti. I have another question for you, Chase.
Yes.
And this is something that I wanted to bring up last week for our New Year's our year in review episode.
Yeah.
But the conversation kind of didn't go that way. Um so this past year was for a hot minute considered the year of goad
hmm
slash the year of treasure. Um and that got a lot of people talking is goad removal.
I think for other people it can be. Um for me, no. And it depends. It really depends. Depends on how you play it. Because like I know that if someone has goaded a creature against me, typically I don't want to block it because the kind of decks I play, I really need all my pieces on board.
Mhm.
So it gets my life total down, but I wouldn't say for me it would be, but I mean then again, it depends. I would say
It
yes.
helps with the player removal. It
It
helps remove
does.
blockers.
It does. It can do that. There are some creatures that also make it so creatures have to block too. So that is in a sense a weird way
Mhm.
of integrating removal into a
Yeah.
deck.
No, it really got me thinking because there's like ways to play removal without like playing removal.
Yes, 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 yes,
And
yes,
I
yes.
think like goad, I know I've sold you on counter spells being removal,
That has helped a lot actually. Mm.
like tap down or like cards don't untap effects like Yosei,
Mm.
or dare I say like back to basics and stuff like that. It's kind of like removing lands.
Yeah.
to me, there's this idea of like removing decisions is the same
Mhm.
thing, but not really the same thing as just playing a path to exile on a creature. If you can't use the creature, if you can't
Mhm.
block it, if or block with it, if you can't attack with it, can't activate the abilities, it is
Mhm.
just taking up space on the playmat doing nothing. It is essentially removed.
Yeah. Um, I really like that you say that because it and I've also kind of learned this too a little bit while working on the EDH cast. My perception of like what good removal is has kind of changed because I think our perspective has kind of been warped by the quote unquote staples. So like your blasphemous acts, your beast withins, your swords, your path. We think okay, single target removal or mass destruction, but removal can be a little bit different in that way that I really appreciate. Like there's alternative uses. So like one thing I learned recently, artifact mutation is a kind of a fun card in terms of removal because even if you can't remove the thing, there's still an alternative use for that. You still end up getting like a ton of tokens. You still get a ton of creatures. Like if you target a Blightsteel with an artifact mutation, you're still going to get the tokens. You're just not going to be able to destroy it. Or like access denied. It's like a what, like a 5 mana counter spell. That's very heavy for a counter spell. And like it removes a spell on the stack, which is, how you got me into thinking counter spells are removal,
Mm-hmm,
which is
mm-hmm,
kind of I
mm-hmm.
like it now. But it also gets you a lot of tokens as well. I just think it's really fun to kind of reframe your perception of removal because then it opens up so many more interactions that you wouldn't have thought
Yeah.
possible.
I know, like, I am a huge fan of Azuri's Predation,
Yes.
which is essentially it's a green wrath in a way. Like it's a
Mm.
green fighty wrath, but if those 4/4s are fighting smaller creatures, you get a board behind it. Like you get stuff that you get to keep. It combos with things like Warstorm Surge / Terror of the Peaks. You can gain like I've gained like 400 life with Tristani in the past. Like there's more than just the removal part of removal. Like
Mhm.
Dusk Dawn, I think
Dusk
it's
to
called.
Dawn. Yeah, 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 yeah. I used to
Yeah,
run that
where
in
like
my
it's a wrath on the front end and
yeah.
then recursion on the back end. Costs the same as Wrath of God, mana wise. Like
Mhm.
so many more possibilities for your game plan and so
Mhm.
many more possibilities for your deck building in general open up and get a lot more exciting when you look past like the 25 pieces of removal that people just automatically default to.
I would agree with that if I'm being honest. There's also a couple cards here that we don't have written down, but they just came to mind while you were talking. Um,
Yeah.
cards that sort of replace things like this. Like we talked about this, I think 2 episodes ago, question mark. Wave of Vitriol, I think is an interesting form of removal because
Love this card
you
so
still get
much.
stuff back, but it takes away the threat on the board.
Or you just straight up punish the greed of the
Yes.
table and these greedy
Yes.
mana bases that everyone's running into.
But like that's a fun weird form of removal in green. Is it expensive? Yes, but it
You're
removes the
playing green.
threat. Yeah, you're playing green, but it removes the threat but still gives you the possibility of a board state, which
Yeah.
I think is really interesting. Or my favorite card, which is technically a fog, but I like to view it as removal, is Comeuppets. I love this card so much.
I don't know if I got you onto this card or if just enough
No,
people
I've
said,
had this for
"Hey,
years.
you need to be running come up." It's like, yeah, I know. Like a couple of years ago,
Mhm.
people were like just starting to run it, and like now it's like super a thing these
Yes.
days.
Yes.
But I still feel like not as many people are running it, which again, like I don't think it's the type of card that's like staple status. But like those gotcha cards, I
Yes.
love those gotcha cards
I
in
do
the
too.
place of removal cards because they still give you meaningful interaction, but you're thinking outside the box. You're getting creative and they're flexible. I think that's the huge thing with a lot of these alternatives to
Mhm.
the couple of staples that people find boring and dreadfully run in their decks. They just do more interesting things and create more interesting situations.
When I look at comeuppance in particular, I think a lot of people just look at the fact that it's a paragraph and they don't read it. I've had this
Yeah.
card for like 4 years, and I love it so much because it is removal. It's removal and fog, because it protects you from like this big non-creature source. It literally is like a mirror almost. If creatures are coming at you, you play comeuppance, and oh my gosh, all that damage gets dealt to the creatures that are coming at you. Or if there's like a non-creature source of damage, it gets reflected back at your
And
opponent.
it's the
So not
whole
only do
turn.
you save yourself, and you don't save any of your other opponents, which can be really good for those big game ending plays that maybe one player has, and then all of a sudden it's Una reverse card. No, I have a turn to buy myself some time and also wipe your board completely or deal 30 damage to your face, and suddenly I'm the victor. I have won games with this card. It's
Oh
so
yeah.
good.
I have beaten you in games with this card,
It's so fun.
and it literally never gets old.
It doesn't, because no one expects it. No one
No,
expects it.
I didn't realize this card's 7 years old. Sorry,
Yeah,
8 years old. This is Commander
2014.
2014.
Yep.
Yeah,
There's only one printing.
yeah. It's $10, and I think that's probably why it hasn't seen more widespread play. Like, for what it is, when a Wrath of God is like $3 and this is $10, they're the same mana cost. I can understand running the Wrath of God over something like this.
Well, I mean, I have one word. I have one word for this card.
Hit me.
All right?
Hit me.
Sunforger.
Yeah.
It's Sunforger. You can get it with Sunforger. Sunforger is 4 or less, by the way. That's
Yeah.
crazy to me.
Yeah. No, there's some like insane instance that, like, if people open their eyes to cards like Sunforger, like, you would run them in a heartbeat. I'm not even thinking just like removal. I'm thinking like Glorious End, Chance for Glory, like
Yeah.
all of those kinds of cards. I think it's interesting. Like, we went from like, hey, here's this piece of removal to like, hey, if I'm running this card, then I can like also run this other really cool card that doesn't see too much play. Like, Sunforger is a
Mhm.
Boros staple, but like not a lot of people play it outside of Boros. They don't play it in Mardu that often. They don't play it in Naya
Yeah.
that often. They don't play it in Jeskai very
Mhm.
often. Like, the possibilities that like one card, like one weird card in your deck can open,
Yeah.
absolutely, your imagination can run wild with a card.
I think we've really pigeonholed ourselves.
Yeah.
And again, this is me talking very broadly, because you have to understand that when you are as plugged in to the community, things seem way more amplified than they
Oh
actually
yeah.
are. And this is something I've I've talked about a lot, but like, I think we as a community have really pigeonholed ourselves into our perception of what removal is. And we did talk about this a little bit, but like, if you just change one card, you have access to a lot more in
Hmm.
your deck. Even just changing your perception on removal, like now, because you talked about counter spells in that way last episode, I got countered at FNM last night, and I was a little bit poopy about it, but like, at the same time, I'm like, I mean, you removed my spell on the stack, that makes sense. And it's just parsing it out that way has helped a lot.
At the end of the day, like, using a counter spell to counter such and such a card on the stack is the same end result as like using an Anguished Unmaking once it's hit play. Like,
Oh yeah.
you got the false sense of security that that card could resolve,
Mhm.
versus someone was just very direct with you and said no.
Yeah.
I like how you worded that, though. Like, people have pigeonholed themselves. And I
Yeah.
think this goes beyond staples, because people have pigeonholed themselves to hills that they are willing to die on,
Yep.
that are like unhealthy hills to die on. Um, and I think, just with the state of the internet and like how it's just really, really difficult to convey tone in a tweet,
Mhm.
people have just escalated the situation further than it needs to go, with
Yeah.
like basically everything in general. But I think like this particular just run more removal thing, it almost reads as snark.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. It just feels kind of like a throwaway phrase that you say now to be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, like, shut up," essentially. And it could very well not be that way to people who do say this. But like, at the
Hmm.
same time, I think it things require way more nuance and way more discussion than just run removal. I mean,
Yeah.
not every deck
240
wants to.
characters can't convey
No.
everything. Yeah, and you know, like you mentioned, not every deck wants to, not every deck
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, exactly. There's
Yeah.
like things like this, like Nikia of the old ways. You can't
Yeah.
cast non-creature spells. So you can run removal in your creatures, but that does limit your card pool drastically.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Or like you can't run your Beast Within, you can't run
No.
your Wave of Vitriol when Nicky is in play.
No, you cannot.
You're stuck.
Unless your own commander is removed.
What do you propose is the solution to just run more removal? Do you think the actual solution is to actually run more removal?
Well, I'm really glad that you asked that because I was going to ask you that. You stole my segue.
I got you. Same wavelength.
I think we need to run more unconventional removal. I
Mm-hmm.
think much like deck building, it's a muscle. And right now
Yeah.
we've kind of fallen into this muscle memory of, oh, I open up a new deck and I know that I'm in green. Okay, Soul Ring, Kodama's Reach, Rampant, Cultivate, Beast Within. Off the bat, I know those are gonna be in there. And like that's not fun for
Ah,
me at
I
least. And
agree.
so I think running like unconventional pieces of removal is the way to go. I know that we talked about it in like Alibu, but like in my Chandra deck, I do have a Blasphemous Act in there. But I mean, I also have removal.
It's in there for a reason, though.
It is because I have Torolf. Yeah, which redirects all that damage and makes it super excessive and amazing, and I love it.
It's a 2-card win con in mono red. It makes sense there. If you're gonna run these different staples, I think having a better reason than, well, it's just a really good card. It's a staple. I have to run it.
Yeah.
Getting past that, I have to run this card is the solution to all of these problems, because there's always an alternative. There's always
Oh
a
yeah.
card that's going to be more exciting
Oh yeah.
than Path to Exile, than Swords to Plowshares. Yeah, it might
Yeah.
not cost 1 mana, but if you're building a deck for the kind of table where it's okay to not run those cards, don't run
Yeah.
those cards.
I
Try
mean,
like try and get out of your comfort zone. I think it's a really, really amazing deck building exercise.
yeah. I mean, even in Chandra, I've included pieces that I would never run anywhere else. Like, I don't think they're amazing, but I run them for two reasons. They're pieces of removal, and they also tutor me for planeswalkers, which is really
Mm-hmm.
hard to do. They're specific planeswalker tutors, like Chandra's Flame Wave, Chandra's Outburst, Liberating Combustion. All of those, if you asked me to run them in any other red deck, I would tell you why would I do that. But like in my Chandra deck, it makes sense. It's removal, or at the very least dealing a lot of damage, and it also functions as a tutor and graveyard recursion, by the way, because they say get them back from the graveyard. I don't think that's that bad because it feels more rewarding to cast that than a Blasphemous Act, in my opinion.
So I basically made a living the last like year helping a lot of my friends just like diversify the cards in their deck. So like I because they feel like they plateaued. Like you mentioned deck building is a muscle. Well, there's this
Mhm.
idea in exercise sports science and like working out, weightlifting, like when you don't continually push yourself, your fitness plateaus. And they felt
Mhm.
like they were plateauing with their deck building. So I said, take out every single staple or every single card in the like top 50 most played cards on EDH Rec, and then let's rebuild your deck. So in doing so, we actually discovered um, there are better cards out there than the staples.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
unironically, like say you don't want to run Blasphemous Act.
Yeah.
Well, have you ever heard of Hour of Devastation before?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
This card's like actually one of my favorite cards. I've been running it a lot more often these days. So it's 3 and 2 red for sorcery that says all creatures lose indestructible until end of turn. Hour of Devastation deals 5 damage to each creature in each non-bolus planeswalker. What are the chances that there's going to be a bolus planeswalker on the table? Honestly, probably kind of low unless you're playing like a Nicol Bolas theme deck.
Yeah.
So this removes like most of the Theros gods, like most indestructible stuff, and it just makes them lose indestructible until end of turn. So like the stone wall that Avacyn Angel of Hope would put on someone's board just completely gone until the end of turn. So they don't get free blocks and they're all softened up.
Yeah.
It's 5 damage too. So it's gonna remove a lot of stuff,
I
really.
mean, yeah, mostly, yeah.
And yeah, there's a difference between 5 mana deal 5 and 1 mana deal 13. But the biggest counter to a lot of these staple cards is other staples like heroic intervention.
Unbreakable Formation gives creatures you
Yeah,
control
that's
indestructible.
the one that I was thinking. Flawless Maneuver was the other one that I was thinking of.
Yeah, yeah.
I know you really like that one.
Yeah, I do. This might be me going off on a tangent. I think this is important because a card that I wanted to bring up was Star of Extinction, which
Oh
is,
yeah,
yeah, 7 mana, destroy target land. Star of Extinction deals 20 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. First of all, it hurts my soul because it deals it to each planeswalker, which is why I don't run it in Chandra. But I like this card. And it's a pretty, for what it is, it's pretty expensive. I think it's like $3, $2. And
229.
yeah, and people are like, well, in my head, I'm like, why don't we run this more often? And then in my head, I'm like, it made complete sense. Because in my head, I'm like, okay, well, Blasphemous Act is 9 mana. And then I went, no, it's not.
Blasphemous Act is
It's 1.
1 mana.
We have been spoiled by cheap removal. We have been
Yeah.
spoiled by cheap removal. That's why we get so excited about like swords and path and Beast Within and stuff. Get spoiled.
Did you know that there's a Wrath of God? Sorry, there are 2 Wrath of Gods that cost 2 and 3 mana.
Yeah. Is it one to Vanquish the Horde?
Vanquish the Horde from the last Innistrad block,
Yeah.
mini block, and then Hour of Revelation from Amonkhet.
Yeah.
And Hour of Revelation is actually insane because it hits like all non-land permanents.
Which is a pretty rough.
You get the discount if there are 10 or more non-land permanents on the battlefield.
Which is always going to happen. That's always going to happen.
Turn 3 onwards, this is white to just
Yeah.
remove everything.
You could realistically cast a Blasphemous Act on like turn 3
Yeah.
for 1 mana. Realistically, like
Yeah.
that's kind of weird. When we think about how the format has evolved, how easy this threshold is, especially now with like treasures,
Oh
stuff
yeah.
like that. Especially with Hour of Revelation, you have any number of treasures, tokens, stuff like that. You're done.
We're gonna play a game real quick. We're gonna play Price is Right.
Yes.
Price is Right. The price of Hour of Revelation right now.
Hour of Revelation.
Yeah.
Okay.
The whiteboard wipe.
I'm gonna guess $1.
You are way over. Like
I'm way over? How
Yeah.
much is it?
This card is 28 cents.
It's a quarter?
Yeah.
What?
It was reprinted in the Zendikar Rising Commander deck. And that version is 28 cents. I feel like we're going Moneyball. Like, Chase, this is Hour of Revelation. People don't read any further past sorcery speed and the mana cost of 6. This is a destroy all non-land permanents board wipe that costs 3 if you're playing Commander. Everyone wants us to hire the board wipe that costs $4, and we can put Hour of Revelation in our deck for 28 cents.
Can I just say, I think Commander players have what I'm now coining the term pip blindness.
They do, yes.
I think we look at pips and I think we're like, nah. I really think that's what it is with this card. Because like the threshold is pretty low. Yeah, it gets rid of everything. But like if you're desperate, man. And like I think we just look at the fact that there are 3 white pips and we're like, I'm done. Really, I think that's what we're doing.
Long gone are the days, like, I don't know, before they printed the Triomes and before Treasure really got a ton of support.
Yeah.
I could understand not running all of these different triple pip cards. People were hesitant to run them in 2-color decks. But with like the Battle Bond lands, the Triomes from New Capenna and Ikoria, tons of treasure that we've gotten like this last year, pips don't matter anymore. You can run these cards and not worry.
When we're looking at these cards, it really is just a matter of our perception. I think that we are so used to low mana values, and at the same time, Treasure
this
has
drive
made things,
for efficiency.
The drive for efficiency, Treasure has made things way more accessible to us, but I think that we're refusing to see that. particularly with cards like this. Like there's a couple of cards that I run. I oh gosh. There's one I don't remember. It's like X and 4 white. It's from like Kamigawa or something. It's like return things from the
Oh,
graveyard that look good. Yeah, you know what I'm talking
Ascent,
about. Yes. Yes. I look at
Ascent
that.
to Avernus.
Yes, 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 and I'm like, "Why am I running this? It's so expensive, I'm not gonna be able to get it," and then I'm like, "Well, you're in a deck that runs a lot of white, you have treasures, you hit Smothering Tithe pretty consistently. That's
Yeah,
not that hard of a thing to do, even in a dual color deck nowadays." I think back maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, running a 4 white pip spell in a Boros deck would be a little bit touch and go. It's not really that way anymore. Um,
yeah.
it's a lot easier than we think it is.
The fixing from the land drops alone is
Mhm.
so consistent now. Like if you put the work in to like fine tune the mana base,
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
It really doesn't. Or like, I mean, I know I have a treasure deck, so it's like dedicated to treasure, but
Yeah.
I really don't pay attention to my land colors unless I am like in the early game and I'm missing a color. Because all
Hmm.
I need is like by 3 colors, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore. That and the fact I do also run Chromatic Lantern, which, kind of fixes that issue a little bit.
I run World Tree for the same reason. Like it
Yeah.
just puts training wheels on the mana base.
Yeah, 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 which helps a lot. But like
Hmm.
I've dirtled over to EDH rack, and currently I'm looking at the top cards, top 100 cards within the past 2 years, and the pieces of removal that show up within the first like 15 cards I want to say is Swords, Beast Within, Path, Cyclonic Rift, Chaos Warp, and Blasphemous Act. Those are the top pieces of removal currently listed.
Those aren't cheap cards either.
No, no, they're not. It adds up when you get one for each and every one of your decks. After a while, you're like, you hold
Hmm.
4 Cyclonic Rifts, and you're like, what am I doing with my life?
I am the furthest thing from a budget player,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I love a good deal when I can get a good deal.
Yeah.
And the cards you can get a good deal on genuinely just like excite me more
Yeah.
at times.
I feel like it's more exciting to do like an Aetherize or an Aether Spouts than a Cyclonic Rift.
Hmm.
Because that's still removal, but it's not the
Yeah,
whole board. But it eliminates one player. It still allows the rest of the table to play. It only has one person rebuild their board
yeah.
state. It's less feels bad, and it gives you more of a interesting dynamic, I think.
It's a defensive tool, whereas like
Yes.
Cyclonic Rift is a I'm gonna try and win the game,
Yes, yes, yes,
or
yes,
I'm
yes.
trying to like prolong the inevitable.
There's
Yeah,
baggage with Cyclonic Rift.
yeah. Like, am I gonna run a card like River's Rebuke? No, I think that's not the vibe that I tend to play, because
Mhm.
that's just like a single person Cyclonic Rift.
Yeah.
Like that's not cool in my book.
I do like Rolling Earthquake in Chandra, which
Yeah,
is dealing X damage to like what is it with like each player and each creature without horsemanship. Love that.
I'm waiting to use Sisay Weatherlight Captain
Yeah.
to get Sunquan into play with Celebrity Deathmatch in response to that. And she's like, you said without horsemanship, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Joke's on
Like
you. I have horsemanship.
I love that though because it leads to
Yeah.
those weird interactions and those weird plays. It's fun. It's weird. It's quirky. It's not samey, you know?
Ice cold take. You don't get cards that elicit the oh my gosh reaction as often when it's a staple.
I agree.
It boils down to what I said towards the beginning of the show. The staple removal pieces are just boring, so people have stopped putting them in their decks. And like I get that. I'm one of those people.
Yeah. I think it's some I don't know. I don't think we've talked about it on here yet, but I know we for a fact we've talked about it online. The concept of staples, I don't really like anymore. I don't really even like to use the term. It just feels like
Phoning
I
it
don't know.
in.
It feels like it yeah, not even that. I mean, yeah, probably phoning it in. It just feels like I am limiting myself. It feels like I'm limiting
Mhm.
myself and I'm not giving myself the option. And I'm not saying like, oh, if you run staples, bleh, you're bad. No, do what brings you joy. That is the whole point of deck building.
At a certain point, having some staples, like you need some grease on the wheels to make sure that the wheels work.
Yeah.
But when you put nothing but grease on the wheels are just going to get unhinged.
When you're constantly Tokyo drifting, you forget how fast you're going.
I think this whole just run more removal thing, just play removal, like it just dies to removal. I think people are trying to say one thing, and because of tone and just being a meme and a buzzword at this point,
Yeah.
it's been lost. And
So here's what I'm gonna say on that. This is probably me being the pessimist.
yeah,
Um, in a forum where the majority of us exist, the fact that it is a visual only forum, we don't really have that luxury to have that kind of discourse. I think,
no,
you and I especially, and I know a lot of other wonderful creators in this community always like to think about, going in with positive intent. Everyone has like positive intent with stuff, and that's definitely true. But I think on Twitter, I think everybody just kind of loses sight of that, and we always just assume malintent, or even we ourselves kind of go in with that foot, because tone is lost. I agree. And I think that, having being able to discuss it, you know, camera to camera, verbally, you can hear us. We're not
hmm
trying to be like, you're bad. Like, no, like being able to have that to hear at, I think is a lot easier for us to discuss it, and to have the platform to discuss it is a better way than just us typing out a tweet. It's not going to have the same impact, I think, because if we just type out a tweet and say, if we just typed out a tweet right now and said, saying dies to removal or just run removal is a buzzword, and you should have better, uh, you know, uh, discussion and criticism of cards and card design, I think Twitter would burst into flames.
probably
I think it would burst into
even more
flames.
so than it already is.
Yeah, it's been quiet lately too. I mean, we could start something if we wanted to, but I don't think we should.
No, not me opening Twitter right now. How could
Not
I?
me cracking
I'd
knuckles.
never I'd never do that.
But I think that you're right. The concept of, just run removal has become just a throwaway phrase, and we don't really critique things, I think, in the way that we should now. A lot of
Yeah.
people were very quick to be like, you know, Sheldon's really wrong for this and these are really bad opinions, but like it was a critique that analyzed the
Yeah.
card in a way that I don't think a lot of us would have. A lot of us would have just said removal.
That's why he's doing the job that he has and
Yeah,
we're not.
exactly. I think
Cuz
it's important to
he's one of
analyze.
the few people that would just off the cuff gut reaction would immediately think like that and immediately
Yeah.
look at something from that kind of perspective.
Yeah.
I
And I
think there's
think
something to be learned there.
I think so too. A lot of social media is really reactive, and I
Mhm.
guarantee you that a lot of people are going to get, a lot of reactions out of like, well, just run removal. It just sounds like, like if I'm like someone's holding up something above their head and I'm trying to get it because I'm short and I'm jumping to get it, they're gonna be like, well, just get taller. What does that help? What does that do for me?
Yeah.
Nothing. It
Now,
doesn't do anything.
you have me thinking right now, and I know we're like slowly wrapping up, but I
Yeah.
think this is important. Um, there's been a vibe cultivated with the whole a lot of people aren't running a lot of removal anymore.
Yeah.
There's been these like game states, these just games in general that have developed where no one's interacting with each other, no one is trying to stop the other person. It is literally just a rat race to the
It's
top
it's
and to a win.
solitaire. Everyone's playing their own version of solitaire.
You're not actually playing a game with each other. You're playing a game with yourself with four other people at the table.
I've fallen into
Like
this before. I've fallen into this
who
before.
can assemble their Rube Goldberg machine the fastest? Like personally, I don't find that fun.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't think interesting decisions
Mhm.
in a format of interesting decisions arise from a game state like that.
Yeah.
Like if we're just gonna sit there and like not interact with each other, I'm not gonna touch your stuff. You're not gonna touch my lurking predators and
Mhm.
anything like that. And we're just gonna see who wins first. You're not actually really playing Magic. You're not really playing Commander. You're not even playing Solitaire. Like you're just
Mhm.
flopping cards onto a table at
Yeah.
that point, and like maybe having a beer with your buddies. And I recognize there are people who like that kind of game.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people out there think like that, but they don't know how to properly express that, which
I
is
would
why they say just run removal.
I would agree with that. I think I've fallen into that myself. I notice that I tend to get very interaction-y, but I don't tend to do a lot of combat. And I've had that critique
Mm-hmm.
before mid-game. Um, I'm a cautious. I would like to describe myself as a cautious player, but I think it could also be just because I'm so focused on the inner machinations of what I'm
Yeah.
doing, which again is not a bad thing.
You like the Rube Goldberg
I
engine
do.
decks
I
that
do.
just
Swinging
happen
makes
to
me
be based
nervous.
in the aggressive, passionate color.
Yes. The one that's very good at thinking clearly. Um
Yes.
I play aggro very, very cautiously, which is a weird way to word it. But
Yeah.
like I do agree with that. I think that we have become a little bit maybe timid. I think we've become a little bit hesitant to explore new things. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen a lot of things pop up, especially recently on Twitter, in the form of people tweeting out, this card is insane. It'll be like a card from maybe 5-6 years ago, and we're like, whoa, why are we running that? And it's like because we're just so stuck in our ways of like
Yeah.
we have to run this, and that's not anybody's fault. It's not like a website's fault. It's not like whatever's fault. It's just we've fallen into this pattern. And I think the more we explore the my okay, hold on, my bit of advice, my parting bit of advice, instead of plopping in that blasphemous act or wrath of God or the swords or the path or the beast within, I would really recommend doing an advanced search on Scryfall, clicking your colors, and just shopping. Just do a little shopping.
I want to call it diversity. Like
Mhm.
diversity of cards, diversity
Yeah.
of thought, and accepting and relishing in diversity of opinion in the format.
Mhm.
I think I think that could go a long way for a lot of people. Not just removal,
Mhm.
but for if someone tweets on Twitter like, "Hey, I really, really, really love Reckless Endeavor," which is another board wipe,
Love
but it's
that
a
card.
board wipe on D12s that makes
Yeah.
treasure. And if someone says, "Hey, man, like that costs 7 mana, that's unplayable," they don't know the context of where they're trying to play this kind of card. Maybe with their play group, 7 mana is perfect.
You know, opening your mind, I would say, is a good way to do it.
Everything has a place.
Yeah.
That place might just not have been found yet. So if someone,
Oh, that's a good thing you just said. That's a good
yeah,
thing
I
you
know.
just said.
I've literally been saying that exact thing for years. That's
I
like,
love the humbleness. I know. Yeah, that was a good thing I said. But like it
yeah.
is because no one was really bopping off about Viridian Revel 2-3 years ago. And
Until
now look
I
where
did a Scryfall advanced search, and now people are like super
baby.
into it.
Now they're into it. It hasn't just found its
Now they're
place yet.
drawing hella cards in green.
That is such a good way to word that. This card isn't bad, it just hasn't found its place yet.
Yeah,
Slap that on a t-shirt. I like that. That's a good one.
I've been on a roll with like these. Hey, you normally say this. Why don't you try saying this instead? Like this whole week has been nothing but that. So,
Like Clippy from Microsoft. You
hmm
searched just run removal. Did you mean run unconventional pieces of removal to make your deck building experience more joyful?
you're finding some of these cards not exciting. Here, let me help you find some cards that you actually do find exciting.
You say this card dies to removal. Did you mean I don't like your opinion? Thank you so much for watching Mad at Magic. If you don't know who I am, my name is Chase, also known as Mana Curves. I'm a Commander content creator streaming Paper Commander and Commander deck building on my Twitch channel, which is also Mana Curves. You can find me on Twitter at Mana Curves, and you can also find me writing articles about Commander for the lovely folks at Star City Games.
And I'm at EK Plays Cards on all of the things. I work behind the scenes with all of your favorite Commander content creators like Casual Magic with Shivan Bot and Ailey and Olivia on Elder Dragon Hijinks. So if you're supporting them, you're supporting me. You can support this show by liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel or leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform, leaving a comment, all that kind of stuff, tweeting about the show. People know that you like the show because it really does go a long way in helping the show. And we'll see you next week.